This episode of the e-commerce playbook is brought to you by Mercury. If you're running an e-commerce company, there's a lot on your plate, especially when it comes to finances. From paying vendors to keeping track of cash flow, it's a lot to manage. But what if you could see everything in the same place? Say hello to Mercury, the financial software company loved by over 200,000 startups and small businesses that gives you full visibility into your business's finances. Deposit your revenue into your account, pay vendors with ease, and even get access to working capital loans all in one place. Learn more about how Mercury can help your e-commerce business at mercury.com/thread. Hey folks, welcome back to another edition of the e-commerce playbook podcast. I'm your host, Richard Gaffin, Director of Digital Product Strategy here at Common Thread Collective. And I'm joined today, coming live from CTC and Skullcandy HQ in Costa Mesa, California, Aileen McKenna, who's our Director of Creative Strategy and Performance here at CTC. She's been on the pod a couple of other times to talk about our overall creative strategy. And she's here today to talk through how we're going to approach creative strategy over the holiday season. But first, Aileen, how are you doing?
I am doing pretty well. Pretty happy to be here in California. I just missed the heat wave. So I'm getting the beautiful, lovely California weather.
Perfect.
So I'm pretty stoked to be here.
Because you're usually in New York, right?
Yes, I'm usually in Brooklyn. Although, to be fair, the weather in Brooklyn was pretty beautiful before I left. So
that's true.
Maybe it's me. Maybe I bring.
That's right. Bringing the mild, the temperate weather across country. Yeah. That's great. Cool. All right. Well, so let's just dive straight into it here. What we're going to be talking about today is basically how, and if you guys have been following our kind of overall approach to the holiday season this year, we've been talking about the 7 peaks and 1 valley of the 4th peak, which is a complex way of saying within the 4 peaks that sort of we would like to occur over the course of the year in your marketing calendar for revenue peaks. The 4th peak, of course, is holiday. And within holiday, however, that's such a dynamic season that a number of peaks and then one important valley all kind of exist from that, let's say October or really September, Labor Day through the end of the year. So basically like what the thrust of this podcast or this episode today is going to be is how the creative strategy maps to each one of the peaks within that second half of the year. So let's just jump right into it. And Aileen, you framed this as kind of, or use the metaphor of a roller coaster to talk about the overall approach to thinking about creative strategy in the season. So unpack that for us.
Yeah. I sat down to think about how I would map creative strategy to, what my, teammates and partners in growth strategy and media had been putting together. And I just thought about how the back half of the year always just feels like a roller coaster. Like you're just strapped in and you're going personally and professionally. And that felt actually then like a meaningful connection to the way that we've also been talking about the back half of the year as having these up moments, but also some, a valley, a down moment that we're seeing this year due to, rising media prices and an election year. And so it just felt really it felt to me like that's what the end of the year feels like. And that's what thinking about how I'm going to approach the end of the year feels like. Except I want people to be feeling like they are the person who is designing and building the roller coaster and not just like getting strapped on and shot out of a cannon.
Right.
So
and I was going to say, I think that's a good metaphor because even if you are the designer of the roller coaster, the experience of riding the roller coaster will also feel thrilling or whatever, it'll be an adrenaline rush, and that can't be avoided. But shaping kind of the way that you approach it is, I think, what's important here, despite the fact that it's always going to be a bit of a rush for sure. Okay, so let's sort of talk about how the roller coaster gets designed. So we have 6 points here that cover the 7 peaks and 1 valley. A couple of them are sort of distilled, but so I like the way that you framed this. The first ascent, the first climb is in September. So obviously it's after Labor Day, but talk to me a little bit about how we're approaching or some specific tactics to think about this initial phase.
Yeah. I mean, I think, on every roller coaster, you have that first, like one really steep hill that you then just get, drop down and you're building up all that momentum before that first drop. And I think that this month of September, which we are acknowledging, we are partway through, is the time that you want to build and build and build and build as much momentum as you can. so that when we start to drop into that sort of election year valley in October, that we've already done a lot of the lead up work on filling the sponge, as it were. So you want to find ways to create moments for your brand. If you missed Labor Day, I think, you can think about, are there social holidays that would apply to your brand? For example, I think we have some clients who I think National Coffee Day might be a nice
Mm.
match. And that's a little bit of a social media holiday, but if that culturally suits your brand and you want to do a sale or a promo or something to not just get sales and beef up your September, but get those new customers, get their email addresses, get their information so that when you get ready to go in the latter parts of the year, you've got like that sponge quite full so that you can squeeze it. Um, and, I think besides, like things like National Coffee Day, I think you could try things like a friends and family sale, things like, I think you can spin up an excuse. The autumnal equinox is coming. That one could be a good moment for like a, full farewell to summer. So I think creatively think about the days remaining in September and the opportunities that you have to put together a moment or a promotion that's going to drive that increase in not just revenue, but in, information in consumers and new shoppers that you can touch back to when you get to the later parts of the sort of holiday sale period.
Yeah. From paying vendors to managing cash flow, you've got a lot on your plate when it comes to your ecom business's finances. But what if you could manage them from one central dashboard? Say hello to Mercury, where you'll get a fuller picture and greater control of your company's finances. Deposit your revenue into your account, pay vendors with ease, and access working capital loans all in one place. You can even consult with an ecom specialist to help you maximize your use of cards and capital. Learn more about Mercury at mercury.com/thread. And of course, part of the reason that it's important to begin building this foundation at this point is that at the kind of the top of this first hill is a mass dip, right? Which is the kind of descent
Yes.
into the valley of October, let's say, which is of course that sort of lull before the before the holidays hit. And this particular year, there's the additional issue of the election kind of coming to play as well. The way CPMs are going to spike during that period. So talk to us a little bit about once you've started the descent, right, in
Yep.
October, what is it like? How does your approach have to shift?
Yeah. I mean, I think you pointed out perfectly that as you drop off that first big climb that you hopefully manufactured, you're swooping into October and you come through October. And normally this would be a great time of year to do early birds if you wanted to start those really early or other promotions that you can promote via media. But the media landscape, in an election year, there's just more competition for ad space. And so the prices in biddable media like social are going to go up. And so and in some ways that might seem like, uh-oh, but to me, I don't think you throw your hands up in the air. In fact, I think this is just the moment when creative and creativity can be incredibly useful as you go into this moment where you want to find ways to sustain, to create another little peak for yourself if you can within the system. And so this is where I think you get smart and you think about what are some ways that you can perhaps this is a great place I think for thinking about influencer. How can you trade on that that audience that an influencer has on the social proof that they provide, that implied, support of your product that you could get, let's say, from a very interesting influencer program.
Mm.
Um, I think there's a couple cool opportunities there as well to go back to what you've done before and see what worked. Dig into your own data and figure out what has done well for you with influencer. Can you work with some of those creatives again? Can you create a similar style program as you go, into this back half of the year, and particularly October?
Mm.
Um, so you want to kind of find ways, I think, to trade on the audience and the reach of influencers in ways that you don't have to spend big media dollars
Mhm.
to get out in front of folks. So this is a moment for interesting influencer stuff, I think.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I like that core
yeah.
point of this being a good time to get creative about driving organic revenue or
Yeah.
the mindset for us anyway, particularly in our world, is always to be thinking about paid media, thinking about what's going to be ending up basically on Meta. But here's a moment when trying that thing that you never had the time to try before, maybe when it comes to some sort of like influencer push or a partnership or whatever the case may be.
Yes.
Like now's the time you really don't have a lot to lose and you have everything to gain because this period is going to be such a low point for paid media spend and effectiveness.
Exactly. If this is a great time to give things a shot, to try, because, the dollars, it's going to be costly to do this with paid. So like, this is a great time to learn from what you've done in the past, to try some new things. I think I spent some time with TikTok earlier this year. They did a creative boot camp and they talked a lot about choosing sort of like, I would describe them as like left of center influencers who you might not initially think about. Sarah Vay did a really interesting campaign with this like grandma influencer from
Nice.
TikTok who is kind of known for making videos like, rules for my funeral and sort of like, she's kind of like a racy grandma, not, like
Right.
very mouthy and spirited, and she's great. And she did a partnership with Sarah Vay, which you might not necessarily think like in, a much older woman with a skincare brand. Her brand is being racy. I think Sarah Vay is a pretty staid brand, but it was great. She did this content about get ready with me for a date with my ex and was, as mouthy and funny as she ever is. But it was such an interesting way for the CeraVe brand to use that authentic perspective of that creator and also kind of tap into a very different audience and a very different and a very different creative style, I would
Mhm.
say, for them. So
Yeah.
I
I love
loved
that.
that. And I think this is a good time to get creative like that if you have the ability.
Yeah. No, it's a good time to take a swing. I mean, because business
Yeah.
as usual isn't going to work anymore. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. I love
We
that.
I was gonna say as well, we also have like another the client that I'm working with right now who to whom we kind of suggested like, hey, what if y'all tried in October when we know, we're not gonna be pushing super hard on the media spend if we can't find efficiency. What if we tried something like a giveaway to build out lead generation, right? To get email addresses, to get folks to get folks in at the door. And so that you can reach out to them again, both when the media gets more efficient to spend, but also via email with your end of year promotions. So, if you can use that as a chance to get some data and the ability to kind of follow up with folks, I think this is another good thing to think about at this point here.
Love it. Okay, cool. So after this low point, which of course is also an opportunity, we now hit another climb, and this is post election day. So what we should see once the election finishes is that media costs rebound. So essentially return to where they quote unquote should be or usually are
Yes.
almost immediately thereafter. So it's kind of like rubber hits the road immediately. So what are some tactics or creative approaches to take advantage of that kind of immediate sort of like springboard after the election?
So I think that first of all, first and foremost, be ready as early as you can. Have those ads lined up and ready to go. You do not want to lose a day. This whole back half of the year and this holiday season are quite compressed this year because of the election season as one factor, but also because it's a leap year. So Thanksgiving is very late. Cyber Monday is very late. And so you want to be ready to act lickety split right away. And one of the things that I think is really great, you can start, obviously, you could do some early bird deals. This is a good time for early bird deals. But I think a lot about messaging around creating urgency, right? Like that's a really classic D2C approach to take. And I think a lot about like how can you manufacture urgency at a time period when some folks might be kind of sitting back and waiting
Mhm.
for the Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals, right? Because everybody is aware of how people traditionally pace their deals. So I think about things like, okay, if you have a hot product, get it before it's gone, or don't risk the perfect gift being out of stock. That kind of messaging that creates the sense of urgency that like you need to act now. You don't want to wait till Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because it could be out of stock. could not have it in the right color or the right size. And I think this is a great opportunity for both that combo of an early bird discount, but also creating a sense of like, oh man, I better act now. Because you want that urgency in that almost like ulcer behavior, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, 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 let me go do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a helpful reminder too that the purpose of early bird is not to build excitement or something for Black Friday. It's to make sales, of course, and to like have people take advantage of the early bird offer. Obviously, it's sort of like it makes sense when you say it that way, but I think a lot of the times you can approach early bird like, or it's easy to go in and to say like this is prep for Black Friday. It's not in and of itself a main event that we really need to drive traffic for, and that's kind of what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's then. So after the climb, to continue this roller coaster metaphor, I like this because now we hit two big loops: Black Friday and Cyber Monday. These are the big days, the
Yeah.
period we've all been waiting for. So talk to us a little bit about what how we're approaching Black Friday and Cyber Monday, those two big days this year.
Yeah. I think of them as sort of like, this is what we've all been waiting for, right? Almost all year in some cases, but certainly in the back half of the year. And these things happen just immediately back to back. It's so fast. And, so once again, like I'm advising for, early bird and that era, like be ready to go with tons of great creative. But I think a lot about, um, two key categories of creative that are really important during this time of year. So the first part is just very clear, very sales forward messaging. I think that like you can go all text perhaps in your design that just says like, Black Friday deal, a percentage off, et cetera. You can be as bold as you want. Um, I think frames are great for this time of year to be added to your catalog and your dynamic ads, where you can overlay a little badge with the percentage off and your logo to get both a little bit branding into that sort of product on white space, but also, again, to get that discount front and center. But the sort of second lane that I think about at this time of year is looking at your evergreen ads.
Mm.
Folks are gonna, these ads have great performance behind them. People are have seen these, are comfortable with them, will have probably will like be like when they get served, it's kind of like, oh yeah, yeah, oh, I wanted that. Or right, that those ads, um, you want to use the strength of that evergreen to your advantage. And so one of the things that we recommend is taking your best performing evergreen ads and just adding a little button or a bug with the sales percentage or sales language over the existing evergreen winners to try and stretch a little more mileage out of them. And also that's much lighter lift work than like going out and shooting a new campaign. And, so you're sort of taking advantage of what we know has worked in the past, but giving it a little bit of oomph for the sale period.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's been part of what or it's been part of our strategy for a few years now. But it's like it's remained really really important, that idea that your evergreen ads are probably going to be your best performers over the Black Friday Cyber Monday period. Part of that is because people that have been waiting to buy are sort of now have the opportunity, or actually are going to buy over the holiday season. They've sort of maybe forgotten about you, but then they're reminded of it. And then also like because there's the most sales intent, the ad that sort of speaks to what your product is the best is the one that's going to communicate the best, because that's kind of how it works. You have a winner, the winner is going to keep winning. So I think that's definitely helpful, like advice in terms of thinking about what you mentioned, like of shooting a new campaign or something like that. That just doesn't need to
Yeah.
happen. But what you do need to do is make sure that I love that, like adding the frames to your best performing ads, just layering in the offer rather than shooting something brand new.
Yeah. I think we have seen this work over the course of time, not just over, you know, the last couple like holiday seasons where we would say like, yeah, you want to make sure that your evergreen's ready to go, that you're getting the most out of it because it's going to perform because it will. But also too, we see this across the year. We've seen this with lots of clients, in other sale periods during the calendar year where this is a really great strategy for, you know, I think calling back to things that people are familiar with. Like, oh yeah, I saw that. I wanted that.
Mhm.
And I just forgot before, but hey, 20% off now. like when you layer that deal on, I think you get that chance, for someone to go, now I can get that thing.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a really good opportunity. Look back, see what has worked throughout the year in Evergreen, see what's working now and gussy them up a bit and
Yes.
they'll be ready for the holiday, with a red lipstick,
There you go.
a blowout. They're good to go.
Perfect. Yeah. You can look like a racy grandma. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the look. All right. So let's move on to the fifth point here. Then after the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, the big blowout, let's say, we're calling holiday twists and turns here. And so, of course, this is the early December period, basically like the days leading up to the cutoff date before Christmas. So talk to us about what's our approach here. How are we thinking about messaging in this period?
This feels to me again, a little bit like the early bird period. It's like this is another opportunity to find ways to create urgency for shoppers. And the sort of deadline of Christmas does that for you. So take advantage of that in your advertising. I think in the beginning part of December, the way that you can take advantage of that and make the most of it for yourself and for your brand is to think about shipping deadlines. Everybody has a deadline by which like they must ship their product so that it arrives in time for it to be under the tree, so to speak, or to be gifted at, such and such a party. And so take advantage of that. Remind people and give that sense of like last minute urgency. This is coming up faster than you think. In years prior, the shipping deadline for some clients has been like the 15th or 16th of December, which is 10 full days before Christmas. And so that comes up not that long after Cyber Monday, particularly this year where Cyber Monday is in December. And so I think you want to create that sense of urgency and say, like, don't miss your chance, sort of like call back to a little bit of that pre pre-holiday and early bird, but also, do not, don't let it ship too late. Don't
Mhm.
have this under the tree this year. So take advantage of that urgency. Again, I think clarity is king. It's the best. Just say it.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a great opportunity to like think of like one thing that I've said before in like some of my various copywriting courses that I've done is that you have to understand what the audience needs to know in order to make a purchase. And this is like a fascinating period because what everybody needs to know is I'm going to be able to get this in time. And that's
Yeah.
usually not really the case over the course of the rest of the year. It is sometimes, but usually it's not.
Yeah.
And so I like your point about driving people like not only I think the listing out like the last day to get it, but also like how long shipping times are or something along those lines where
Yeah.
people can think through because it becomes less and less about is this a thoughtful gift and more about is this a gift that is just going to be there at all and kind of rebalancing the chemistry of your copy, so to speak, to kind of
Yes.
favor the timeline, I think. Which is good.
Yes, exactly. And then I think, you have your shipping deadline and it passes. And I think, you still have the urgency of Christmas, but you maybe have a different approach there. So I think if you are a brand that sells gift cards or you're able to sell gift cards, that is an awesome message to use after, which is like, we'll get here in time for Christmas, particularly if you do like e-gift cards, right?
Mhm.
Like can buy it last minute. We'll always be there in time for Christmas. Like I think those are great messages to hit on, especially when you think about very late in the game shoppers, which I also think it's a good message to hit on just because I think everyone at some point has been linked on a gift. Like you don't have to be the person who's like, I only shop on December 24th to have forgotten someone and been like, oh man, what am I going to do? So I think you could you're not just looking at those like super late panic shoppers. You're also looking at people who are like typically pretty good planners, but forgot something
Mhm.
or someone gifted you something and you weren't ready. I think you can make all kinds of different plays at this idea of like getting this gift that like is in your hands right away is super quick. And the closer you get to Christmas, you can keep putting on, putting that messaging front and center, which to kind of put the pressure on like, hey, Christmas is coming. You need something.
Yeah.
Hey, we're a great solution.
Yeah. I love it. All right. So then our final kind of point here is how we think about what we've been calling Q5, which is that period post Christmas before New Year's, more or less, before you really hit, I guess, the health and wellness bump of January. So let's talk about, kind of mentioned here at the beginning, after Christmas, or of this paragraph anyway, after Christmas, our data shows that you've still got opportunities to close the year out strong. So what are the same, or what are some of the ways that you can close the year out strong?
I think everybody's instinct or first thought is often clearance sale, which is actually a great idea. It's a great time for a clearance sale. But I think this is also a great time to consider messaging and think about the experience of the end of the year for the consumer. What is going on in their life so that you can figure out how to speak to them directly in that moment. So are they, young folks who maybe got a bunch of gift cards for Christmas or cash or those kinds of things. Can you speak to the people who got gift cards from your brand? I grew up, as a kid, I got gifts from all my aunts and uncles when I was little. But by the time I was a teenager, they didn't know what to do. So they just gave me, here you go. Here's $50. Merry Christmas." And my favorite tradition the day after Christmas was to go shop sales. So, because I was flush. And lots of folks are going to be flush with gift cards and, and all of those things. So you have that opportunity, I think, to speak to those people in your messaging. And, as opposed to just doing straight up clearance, you can do clearance, but you can also kind of speak a little more closely to folks with gift cards or Christmas gift money. But I also think you kind of touched on this. Um, we're riding that at that point in the year, we're riding right into New Year, New You, resolution time. And everybody has just had, or at least all of my friends have just had an indulgent season. Everybody is already kind of being like, oh, I shouldn't have had that extra glass of wine or shouldn't have eaten that extra cookie. And thinking about like, how do I want to be next year? What are my goals for the next year? Like, in the downtime of that week, I think a lot of folks already have the coming new year on their mind. So can you take advantage of that and start speaking to that interest or that feeling in your consumer before January 1st?
Yeah. So yeah,
Um,
particularly if you're a health and wellness brand, you kind of
yes.
combine two of these ideas, which is you got a gift card on Christmas. Now it's time to use it before. I love that idea about just sort of speculatively here, thinking about a gift card, or rather like a gift card, a specific campaign of saying like, hey, you got a gift card for Christmas or whatever. They couldn't pick something out for you. Now it's your turn. And then
Yeah,
like putting up a page that like you could only pay for in gift cards or something along those lines, where it's just like a
that'd be
special,
fun.
some type of campaign directed, or at least messaging directed toward gift card holders. I think that's really interesting. But it all
Yeah,
kind of plays into this idea of what are people doing in this period? What do their lives look like? What might they need to buy now? What might opportunities might be for them to make purchases? But okay, cool. So that kind of takes us out, and then of course we're off into January, which is obviously the era of New You, or New Year, New You, New Year's resolutions, and so on and so forth. But that's a conversation for another podcast. So, anything else, Aileen, that you kind of want to leave us with when it comes to approaching creative this holiday season?
Oh, I think, for every one of these sort of peaks and valleys and things is try to look back at your data. Learn as much as you can from what you've tried before, what ads have worked, what ads haven't, and really focus, I think, on being, particularly when you have a specific offer, really focus on how you can be as clear as possible. Um, and make sure that that's something, um, Meta used to talk a lot about, and I haven't heard them say this as much, but recently, but they talk a lot about when folks are on particularly social media. Um, we often think of ourselves as competing with other advertisers in our industry or buying our same type of consumer. And that's how we think of the competition. And that's how we think about developing our ads in some ways. But you're actually just competing with like people's real life, people who are on Facebook or Instagram to see pictures of their friends' babies and nieces and nephews and, check in on everyone as the year comes to an end and they post their favorite pics of the year or whatever it is, right? You're competing with, news and information and storytelling just as much, if not more than competing with other advertisers. And so I think being eye catching and being clear in any one of these time periods is going to be a really, really important part of succeeding at the end of this year.
That's right. Clear beats clever, as they say in the copywriting
Yeah.
world. But cool. All right. Well, Aileen, appreciate you joining us. And folks, if you want this level of thought work put into your creative strategy, and you're a brand that's between 10 and 100 million in annual e-commerce revenue, you know where to find us, commonthreadco.com. Hit that hire us button, and we would love to talk to you further. But Aileen, thanks for joining us. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.